Yes.
And then it could
I
turn.
know, right?
Yeah.
Have you had a slow truck? Hey, where'd she get her dogs?
Okay, trustees, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines are opened. Go for it.
Okay, welcome everyone to the February 9th, 2026 regular meeting of the East Hampton Town Trustees. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lorraine, can you,
Certainly.
Here comes Bill.
John Aldred,
here?
Francis Spa,
Here.
David Cataletta,
Here.
Patrice Dalton,
Here.
Ben Dollinger, Jim Marno,
Here.
Jim Grimes, Celia Josephson,
Here.
Bill Taylor.
Here.
I think that's it. Did I say Tim?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
For the record, we have 6 trustees here present live. It constitutes.
Okay, we'll start with public comment. Susan, any guest?
Sit. Thank you. Sit. Very well behaved dog here. I'm Susan McGraw-Keeber, former trustee, so I'm happy to see all of you this evening. And this is our dog, Keezer Love. Keezer is for Lake Keezer in Maine, where I grew up in the summers, and Love is for Lovell, Maine, where my family's had a home since 1860. And she's a bearded collie, and she's pretty well behaved, as you can see. Sit down. Okay, sit. You want a treat? Sit. I'm here because she cannot speak for herself, but I'm here to speak for her and for everybody who has dogs. And it's a small little introduction here. I always want to say that there are no bad dogs, but there are bad owners because they don't pick up after their dogs. So I always carry one of these little bags, and we have bags at the beach for free. But I was thinking, the date for moving the beach time for dogs is now into October. And September 15th is really a cutoff date where we're all excited. And I know Celia, in the paper you had written, people look forward to September 15th. Chris, you're a dog as well. And your dog, Patrice, you have 3, right? And we look forward to that. And we have them on a leash. And then at a certain point, we let them go because they can run. I never let mine go.
Well, I have one, and she comes. When I call her, she will come back. And she always has a little treat when she does. And these are, I could eat this myself, it's so good. But when most of the people have gone, the dogs get exercise, and she has to look good in her bathing suit, like we'd all do. So I like her to get the exercise and run. So I would like to say that I'd like to see us keep the September 15th date. And also I know this involves the trucks that go on the beach for fishing, which is very important to our local community. And it's a tradition, and also a tradition for dogs to be able to be on the beach from here all the way up to New England and in Maine. I was thinking that maybe there might be a permit that we could introduce when you go to get your beach permit. Maybe if you have a dog, you can pay a little extra, and that sometimes makes people feel, I'm paying for my dog to be here, I'm gonna take care of cleaning up after my dog, and to let people know that they should keep their dog on a leash until they don't see people who are sitting on the beach reading, because I would find that annoying myself. But I thought of maybe adding a little something to the permit if you have a dog and you want to take your dog to the beach. It might encourage people to be more aware. And I know we have the free dog bags, which I encourage everybody to use. And I think that's it. My dog, turn around the other way. She herds sheep. I think she's very interested in everybody else, but she herds sheep and she will corral everybody that doesn't behave and bring them in. So I thank you very much for having me this evening. It's lovely to see everybody. And I want to also thank the trustees this evening for discussing the scholarship fund. I really want to thank you so much, and I look forward to the clam contest. Okay, so thank you very much. And I am posting 3 things on the website for you. So if you have anything, I also want to take this opportunity to say, if you have something, please feel free to email me and I will put it on the website for you, as I've done for you, David, when you have.
Thanks for maintaining the website too, Susan.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Well, it keeps me informed, and I do miss all of you. I miss being a trustee.
Miss you.
I do like the work. So you never know. Maybe I'll be back.
You can run again.
Okay.
Susan, just to set your mind at ease a little bit, there was a meeting that we were trying to schedule with the village. It was delayed a little bit. It hasn't happened yet, but I guess there've been some conversations between trustees and the village, and I think the village is reconsidering this, full change of dates. They may try it on lifeguarded beach first, so, but
What I forgot to mention is the more we erode the time that dogs are allowed on the beaches, it'll start to get shorter and shorter and shorter. And that's, historically, that's how things tend to be, because you'll start to see less and less time. So I want to preserve that for us. And it means that all of us who are dog owners have to be respectful of the people on the beach and respectful of the beach. I used to be on the beach committee. So I wanted to also say that. So our beaches are the most beautiful in the world, and we have to take care of them. So everybody who has a dog, or if you don't have a dog, just take care of the beaches, take your trash with you.
People access.
Yes. What?
People need access too.
Yes, but everybody has to clean up and take care of the beach. That's what we're known for, so let's,
The fishing season down.
Yep. Surfing.
yes.
There's a lot of things that happen.
Yes, well, I did mention the trucks, but I was here specifically for her, and since I wanted to be speedy so you could get off to your meeting, and all right, you ready for a treat? Okay, all right, good night, everybody, thank you very much, and thank you, John, thank you.
I know that.
Drew Bennett is going to give us a little information about the proposals for the hydrographic work, and
So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Drew
you'll have to
Bennett.
speak to the microphone, sorry.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Drew Bennett, and I'm helping the trustees do their work on reestablishing potentially the east inlet of Nappy Harbor. So the first step was to get some updated baseline mapping done and prepare the scope of work for both upland surveys, ownership and topography, as well as bathymetry of both the east inlet and the west inlet and some western beach areas, which could potentially receive dredge spoils, and also Hicks Island, which is a dredge spoil deposit site at this point in time. And we went out to 3 surveyors and we got 2 prices essentially. And John had reached out to me. I had forwarded to the trustees a week or 2 ago. I don't remember exactly. And John had reached out to me and asked if I would come to the meeting to answer questions that the trustees might have. And so I make myself available.
I had one question, Drew. Were these surveys something that were necessary already for the permits, or were they to submit the permits, or were these something that was requested by the DEC?
So to be able to prepare the application, you need to have a map, and the map has to have certain pieces of information on it. And we have a fair amount of historical information, but we don't have an up-to-date snapshot of existing conditions. The last topographic survey of both inlets was done in 2012. The Suffolk County DPW does occasional surveys of the west inlet, but they haven't done both the east and the west, as well as the shore profiles, or for that matter, the topography of Hicks Island. So Hicks Island, if you look at the records historically of dredging in the 70s and the 80s, there's probably several 100,000 cubic yards of dredge spoil in the island itself. And there's some discussions of whether that's something that should be looked at. But first step is topography, water depth, mean high water, mean low water, the basics, so that you can prepare a plan if you decide to go forward for an application. That's the checklist for an application.
Are you,
My question would be, is the Walbridge survey meet the requirements that you need?
Yes, so I put together a scope of work and a map that shows the area that had to be surveyed, and I sent it out to 3 different firms, and it went out to Walbridge, it went out to Saska's, and it went out to the Rayner Group. And Walbridge and Rayner responded with cost proposals.
I mean, the Walbridge survey will suffice. You're-
Yeah, they are apples to apples, that's the whole idea, yeah.
and the Walbridge survey was so much cheaper than the Rayner.
Yes, yeah.
Did Rayner ever justify why
Yeah,
they're,
I spoke to everyone, including Saska's, who elected, at first they were interested and elected not to for mostly operational reasons. But it really comes down to Walbridge's history and database on ownership of the land in that Lazy Point area, which is a little complicated. And they also have a marine drone to be able to do the bathymetry data. The Rayner Group is a little less familiar and experienced in the area, so they had budgeted a fair amount of time in terms of determining property lines and who owns what. And they also had subbed out their bathymetry work, and probably chose not to sharpen their pencil as much as
Okay.
they perhaps could have.
But the bid you,
That
the
explains
bid
it.
you received from Walbridge is adequate for your needs?
Yes.
Okay.
You have a question?
yeah, are you surveying the land, or are you going to take soundings in the water?
Both. Yeah, so a little sketch here if you're interested. Would you like to see it? Yeah. All right, I don't have a presentation, but I'll do the permission to approach.
Yes.
So this is a sketch. Let me get my bearing. So this is the old, this is the old east inlet location. This is the current west
Right.
inlet location. And so we are going to survey the upland areas, this blue shaded area, and this blue shaded area here, and the yellow lines depict where the soundings will be in the inlet. So the idea is that the east inlet would be restored, and based on prior studies, been determined that really can only support one inlet, so that the west inlet would probably be narrowed or filled in. This is Hicks Island, which has several decades of dredge spoil. And we also looked at surveying some western beaches, which I think are still to be discussed, exactly which areas that you might want to, if you even choose to. Those are discussions for a little later down the road, but Shore Road, the beach toward Mulford Lane, Bayview Avenue, et cetera. So
The DEC probably surveyed that stuff last time they dredged, which wasn't that long ago.
the Suffolk County DPW has a survey of Shore Road from the west inlet to, I guess, the other, whatever that turn of Shore Road is. So
What about currents and tides and things like that?
So we'll be using existing tidal data that's already published. We won't be doing any current measurements. There's been some prior studies on that we'll try to utilize. And I think that the strategy was that we will put together the best application package we can using the base map that we're going to create here, referring to some prior studies. And if the trustees agree, file it with the appropriate agencies and take the temperature. And then if there are outstanding data needs that various agencies are looking for, you would be able to formulate studies focused on responding to the agency's questions that they need to have addressed.
Should we show this to the agencies before you do the work or just do the work and then submit?
Well, we could have a pre-conference,
Yeah.
that's something, yeah. I think, yeah,
Well, this isn't required to even file the permit.
yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think, I don't know what agencies you're thinking of, but obviously DC and probably Department of State, or maybe Army Corps of Engineers, but I don't think they're not gonna want us to do this, and if it's gotta be done to file the first blush into the DEC, I think we should just go ahead and do it, because they're not gonna ask for anything less, that's for sure.
Well, just to get their input, not to ask their permission, but just to get their, their awareness.
We did talk about that, and I think we would do that after the survey is
Yeah.
set. And
To show them that.
typically we do pre-application conference for the DEC in Stony Brook. And
So this is necessary, right?
yeah, it's the
I would
minimum
make
that's.
a motion that we go with the warmer survey.
Second.
Neighbor,
Aye.
most carried, as they say.
So you can go ahead.
Okay, very good.
Just, the DC Army Corps, or I don't know about the Army Corps, but Department of State, I'm sure are aware of this. They've been at several meetings about this in the past, so
Yeah.
there's an awareness of the agencies of this is
The
coming.
concept of narrowing the West Channel seems like, I know you mentioned it, that seems like it might have a little promise. If it, it could be very easily maintained.
Yeah, it's been an idea that's been kicking around for 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Drew.
Trustees, just to let you know, you do have one caller on hold. Let me know when you're ready.
Why don't you put them on now if they want to make a comment or ask a question before the next presentation?
Okay, stand by, please.
Yeah, I think it's Joyce.
And last four digits of 8264. You are live.
Hi, this is Joyce. I was just waiting for PEP to go. Apologies.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Joyce. Just have one more presentation before EP.
Okay, Joyce, this is LTV. Just stay on the line. I'll let you in when the board is ready.
That's it. Ron Paulson.
How you doing, Ron? Thanks for coming.
See you all. Thanks for the opportunity to come talk about some projects that we've been working on. I'm now part of a nonprofit called Clear Bays. It was with Cornell many years. In the last 2.5 years, we merged out of that into a nonprofit to continue on the same work we were doing. A lot of the equipment and techniques were developed by personnel in Clear Bays. So it just gives us a little more broader reach. And this is one of the projects I want to talk about today is a proposal to look at Swan and Pond Lane that the community had asked us to take a look at and to see if we could come up with a proposal to look at the water quality issues there that are pretty well documented, and that there is a PowerPoint that goes with this. So those are the two ponds in the Hog Creek area, and they, constantly, pretty routinely have had blue-green algae blooms, high chlorophyll levels, low DOs, various levels of eutrophication. And they're small, but, still valuable part of the watershed. And the community in that area has a lot of interest in seeing what, if anything, can be done. And I think there are things that can be done. And the first part of this, and the next slide maybe would help. Oh, do I have it or you have it?
I have it. Just let me know when you want them changed.
So this gives you a better idea where it fits into the watershed. And the plot on the right is from the Suffolk County watershed delineation for Haw Creek. And you can see the ponds fall outside of that. They have their own watershed, but they were small, and these smaller ponds were not part of that effort to delineate, where in the watershed is potential places that are contributing. So I used water table elevation maps to estimate, what water was entering there. And those lines are the groundwater contours, the white line. And flow is perpendicular to those. So you can kind of, roughly estimate what part of the watershed is contributing. And there's, medium density homes in there, quite a few of them. And a lot of that groundwater has to emanate in discharge area. Some of it is probably going to go under the ponds to Gardeners Bay, but a lot of it is probably going into the ponds. And the ponds aren't static. Don't think of them as swimming pools. They have a side that accepts groundwater, and they have a side that recharges it back underground out into Gardeners. So understanding that is key to being able to do, something to help mitigate that. Yes. So again, this is the submarine groundwater discharge. Emanates, the water emanates from inland, and it finds a venting point in a surface water body. It could be an estuary, a pond, a river, but all groundwater eventually on Long Island finds a home in the surface water. So there's no getting around that. That's what's impacting these surface waters. Small ponds like this that don't flush directly are under more threat from this. It takes less nitrogen or phosphorus or whatever to impact those water bodies because they don't have another way to get rid of them other than a very passive flow in and out. I think everyone's familiar, with the conditions at times in the ponds. There can be a lot of macroalgae like present in the left of the slide. It's been posted for, blue-green algae situation in the past. And the two bottom slides on the right were recent. I went out before the Ice Age moved in on us totally. And what's interesting about those slides, the one in the lowest left corner, if you look near the shoreline, you'll see open water. And that water is open because that's probably groundwater seeps. Groundwater is 55 degrees, where it can come through strongly, be warm enough to keep some of the ice away. When we get this cold, it gets overwhelmed and it will. But it was useful. It was just good timing to be there. The slide in the middle on the bottom, you can see the bird populations found a pool of water. So there's a lot of springs in this area, and that was a rough indication to me that this is groundwater discharge active. It's understanding that is really the phased approach we want to use. The next slide. So the phased approach is really to survey the pond, where the groundwater's coming in, and at what rate, and where it's leaving. And we do that with various tools we developed, seepage meters, pour water devices that we've been using for a couple decades now. And I've done this work through the US, even in certain Superfund sites throughout the country. So it's a well-accepted mapping technique. After that survey, we're able to look at that and map out the shoreline. So the whole entire shoreline will be mapped, maybe 100 or 200 foot areas, and what the features are on there. Groundwater, strong discharge with high nutrients, good buffers, no, so there'll be a product that'll be useful in general because you'll have a better idea of what part of the shoreline's impacted. And then you can look up gradient of that and say, oh, well, maybe we should concentrate on this. The third phase would be in areas that are suitable, we would make suggestions on remedies that could be useful. It could be reestablishing or enhancing the buffers to enhance them to be good denitrifiers. Maybe it's a stormwater situation that needs better to be looked at. And there's, various things, so we would rate that to some degree. The fourth phase, in the areas where something is reasonably implemented, we would go ahead and prepare cost estimate, a design, and have it ready to seek additional funding. This is all through the Community Preservation Fund, this proposal.
Sorry. Sorry, I didn't know. I was rushing.
Okay. So that's a rough idea of how we would go about it. The yellow dashed lines would be transects of stations that go across the pond. What we're looking for is something about the depth, the muck layers, sediment types, and we would measure some of the pore fluid and surface water in those areas to get an idea of how, what those conditions are. The red dots, are the pore water stations along the shoreline and also seepage measurement stations, so we could determine if it's, groundwater, is it entering, is it leaving, is it kind of in neutral, so to speak, and what the water quality is. So if you have those three things, if you have the rate of groundwater, the area that it can discharge, and the concentration, you can do fluxes within each of those segments. Next slide. Just, some of the equipment we use, the pore water devices on the left, and the seepage meters, it's ultrasonic meter. That's very robust enough to measure these flows and quantify them. So this you might find interesting also. This is Eel Cove. We did this work in that tributary of Georgica. We did a lot of this similar work in Georgica through the Peconic Land Trust funding and cooperation somewhat with Cornell and Stony Brook. What I want to draw your attention to is that we broke that cove up into the 5 or 6 segments where we rated the shorelines. And what we found is, you have to look at the chart, that if you go all the way over to the end, to the right, you can see how many pounds of nitrogen we were able to calculate per section of shoreline. What was really interesting is that North 2 is all the way to the top. And where that, had a couple 100 pounds or 100 pounds of nitrogen coming through a year along that shoreline. And then you look at North 1, goes all the way up to 700 pounds, really significant. The pore water concentrations in these areas were like 20 milligrams per liter or more, which is unheard of. Basically, groundwater is 10 milligrams standard for drinking water. And so a high output, that's really a lot of nitrogen over 100 to 200 foot strip. Interesting is you go to the middle section where there's a good buffer and a good wetland, drops to 18. So the two sections are right next to each other, doing completely different things. And the remedies, or what you would want to do, is look at the ones that we know are bleeding heavily, this high nitrogen water. The same thing happened to the south. We had that low 18 milligram per liter in the middle. The next one just south of that went back up, in values to hundreds of pounds. You went even further south where it starts to die off again, and the values dropped even lower. So just within that cove, there were 4 or 5 different things happening as far as groundwater nitrogen, and where efforts could be better focused, inland and at the shoreline. Okay. So the last part of this would be some type of remedy. We're looking more at passive treatments and aggressive ones. We've taken to looking at these enhanced wetlands that can bring in, and a lot of the areas in those ponds are devoid of a good buffer. There's grass right up to the edge, or there's nothing there. And so they would benefit in general for a wetland, some type of restoration to put a buffer back. What we've been hoping to do is to put enough carbon in that to allow for the bacteria also to denitrify. So it's designed to do both. And that bacterial denitrification occurs naturally already. You have soils that have the right carbon. So we're just mimicking and restoring buffers that it would have both abilities besides habitat restoration. Okay. So I just wanted to, that kind of gets you through Swan and Pond Lane, the approach. We're also still working in Georgica. Wanted to present that data to you because I thought it was instructive to see how that area, this approach, and we're looking, Stony Brook's looking hard at what we can do inland here. And it's hard to get cooperators down there, so we're struggling a bit to get property owners to allow even, in some cases, what we're doing is really under your jurisdiction because it's at the shoreline. But just, if you have to go inland of that at all, then you're on someone's property. So you really need both in these cases.
Do you think that in the case of Eel Cove here, where the high nitrogen concentrations have been found, do you think it's from upland properties near the pond residential, or do you think it's more distant agricultural flows?
Yeah, it's both, but it has a little more heavier agricultural with those kind of numbers. You have a lot of density of homes, a lot of big homes.
The water comes like from Long Lane and stuff down there.
That watershed goes a mile or more inland. And unfortunately, all of that will focus in an area of a water body. And it likes these tributary headwaters a lot. They're like magnets for this. So that's why I think Eel Cove has gotten such strong layers, such strong inputs. The other one we're looking at, and there's different work going on, is in Acabonic. Sorry about the spelling, Harbor. And, there's work going off the general store now to move forward on taking care of some of the ammonia plume that we discovered there with the same method. We'd like to look further at that strip where the general store is, because that shoreline there along that creek, comes out of Pussy's Pond under the bridge, and then it's kind of like a creek for a while. That shoreline, besides the smaller area that we're going to treat, well, Cornell is now doing it, there's about another 150 feet of that shoreline that's highly eroded, a lot of nitrogen, could use some type of restoration. So that's an area we're interested in. And then Tambar Cove is also another area we've been monitoring for years. There was a injection PRB put in that showed some effect, but it was a pilot. And Tambar Cove is a lot of macroalgae in there too, and a lot of groundwater. So, and that buffer is weak. So these are just other examples of how we can use the data we have already, in some cases, to try to do some more immediate remedial things. And I think, working with the buffers, enhancing them, besides restoring a habitat and controlling some erosion, getting benefit of nitrogen too. I think that was it.
Sorry.
These are just a few pictures of that culvert area. But you can see on the left is the buffer of that, and on the right, it's pretty highly eroded and steep. And, it's bleeding quite a bit of nitrogen there. Let's see, I don't know what, there's something else in here. Oh, here's Tambar Cove. And that cove area there's a lot of nitrogen in that cove area. And this last summer, the macroalgae just exploded in there. So there's hundreds of pounds of nitrogen coming off. There is somewhat of a well in there, but it's sparse and it's not very robust, not robust enough to help with.
That's another thing where the water's coming along for miles.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have a lot of commercial stuff there? Houses, there's a bit.
Small community homes and things in there. And again, these coves tend to be magnets. It's not all the same. And once you find these hotspots like this, you can really begin to do some damage to the inputs because you understand what's going on, where it is, and different remedies you could use.
Do you need the trustee permit? Do you need like our approval for the water survey for the Swan Pond?
Well, we're here. We want to share everything we're doing, make sure you guys are on board and supportive, and whatever we would need to go further, we want to.
Ron's going to put in a proposal to the water quality, CPF Water Quality Fund. So we have a representative on that committee that votes on, recommending the projects that come in as proposals to the town board for funding. So I think this project gets recommended for funding to the town board and moves forward there. They'll have the opportunity to come back to us and ask for our permit to do the work, which I'm sure we'll be happy to.
Absolutely. Yeah, once it hits the proposal level and gets through that and we get funded, we definitely want to make sure you guys are aware of everything and whatever you feel we need, we're here to work with you. So
I have one question, Ron. The question was really directed at the ponds, in particular Pond Lane Pond, but it kind of applies to a lot of these places that examples that you gave us. In Pond Lane Pond, there's a whole drainage system, road drainage system that flushes into the pond directly. So, how do you square the, looking at groundwater, but now you have a potential huge influx of surface waters that may, affect the impacts that groundwater may be skewed by a huge influx of surface waters. So is that taken into account in your evaluation of the pond before you make recommendations about remediation?
Well, part of the survey is to identify those and to say this is also problematic. And, we can get a good handle on the groundwater impact. to a lesser degree, the stormwater, if it's something that can be measured. If it's going through a culvert, I think some of that goes into dry wells of sorts, and some of it just overflows and goes down the pathway there, I saw. So, part of this has a pretty robust surface water component monitoring. So we could grab some samples from that, see what nitrogen's in that runoff. We would think that would be valuable in this case.
Because I went there to see it, and it's like this huge drainage pipe that comes right into Pond Lane Pond, and it's just, pretty obvious that's where the main source of, toxins and coming out.
I'm not sure how many dry wells there are. I think
I don't think there's any.
this was done in the 60s, and I think they just piped it right into this piped into Hog Creek as well, from the Clearwater side.
That'll definitely be a component. If it's in a pipe, we could measure the flow and get a sample.
Yeah.
So we could say X amount of pounds from that, X amount of pounds. So,
When it's in a pipe, you probably have to put some kind of structure there to add the chlorine, right?
Yeah, once you have a structure like that, and you're confining like that, you can get a flow and a value. And the samples, they're all grab samples, so it's nothing too sophisticated.
It's all the road runoff also.
Yeah.
It's not only all nitrogen.
No, it's other things for sure, and phosphorus is another one. So we got to look at those two in particular, but there's other things that could be running off that I've taken one step, and then getting a handle on this would be a good start.
Good. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Ron.
Thank you, Ron.
You have your blessing to go forward at this point. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, John, approached a few years ago by a different group looking at these two ponds, but the other group was looking more at us for funding. And that kind of fizzled out when we started to talk about public access to these two water ponds. I don't remember who it was, I just know this is.
I don't think, they also applied to the CPF Water Quality Fund.
They did come to us to.
Yeah, they gave a
Complain about it.
presentation,
Basically,
They were gonna do
Bring it
rain
to our attention.
gardens along the roads and
It's like the residents,
wetland restoration. They had a landscaping company plans and everything.
I recall that our response, as soon as we said the words public access, and it kind of fizzled out pretty quickly, I thought.
yeah, the ponds there were signs down there, so no trespassing.
That's still an unresolved issue.
Yeah, it's something that I think we should consider when this is coming through the pipeline. How it be resolved. I just remember the last time a presentation on it. That was our response, was about getting in there from the public.
Yeah, I think that would apply if we were asked for money.
Right,
I'm not sure how it applies if the group is applying for water quality money. They'll begin with these evaluations, I guess, as part of a longer range plan to ultimately move into remediation. But it's not our money.
Right.
So.
But is this a logical way to structure it? We know that there's a major source of road water, runoff from the road being piped into there. Wouldn't it be something to consider to do that first, like make sure that that is addressed?
Well, I think what they're doing first is evaluating all the input into the pond, basically from groundwater and surface water.
It needs to be addressed at some point. It's making the problem more difficult to solve. We're looking at the solution, which includes plantings, restoring the shoreline, which make a lot of sense. But I'm just a little concerned about the culvert.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I mean, you know, if you had all the money in the world and resources in the world, you could address it all at once. But I don't think that's the way it's going to unfold, really.
If we could give some guidance to what the magnitude of both are. You know, is the nitrogen net mostly the groundwater issue 60%, and stormwater is 40, is stormwater 80? I mean, we can zero in on that, and that would steer the what you got to do, prioritize what you got to do. That's kind of the guidance we feel we can give, you know, to this, so that we're not just, you know, there's only so many funds around, we want to use them, you know, wisely.
But you mentioned drainage, like cisterns to like pump that water into it. You know, something to hold.
Can people please speak at the podium? Thank you.
Sorry. Any way to capture that water and keep it in
Well, if it's going through a pipe, there's loaders you can put in the pipe, you know, the dimension of the pipe and the height of the water. And it's a stream gauging technique. And it's a hardened structure, so there's formulas for that. So you can come up with how many gallons are coming through, you know, per minute or whatever. And then, you know, those loggers and things can stay out indefinitely because you have to capture the rain event. So it can't be waiting there. Well, you know, and that's a USGS protocol technique that's used to measure. When you have a hardened structure, it's easy or easier.
It's easy to measure the volume, but it's not easy to fix the problem. Yeah, you have the engineering when that subdivision was put in was you find a body of water, let all the stuff run into. And so you're talking about dealing with all the water that might possibly fall in a rainfall event on the whole subdivision. You know, you're talking about huge amounts of water. And you're also pretty much talking about, you know, like keeping it someplace long enough to actually treat it, which would be, you know, a time, there have to be a time, you know, some sort of interval in there.
Yeah.
You know, dealing with some of these engineering that was done a long time ago is extraordinarily complex. And, you know, they're big, you know, it'd be a huge project.
What would the sewer option buy us if we had water and went into a sewer treatment plant?
I'm not sure. Does road runoff water treated?
No, it wouldn't be. I mean, combined sewer outfalls are very problematic. They tend to want to.
Because in New York City, they have, and in Boston, they have some way of incorporating that water running into it, into the pipes. I don't know if it goes into the sewer system itself, but you don't see that much standing water in the city. So some way of leveraging that.
A lot of them have combined systems that work okay unless you get hit with a sort of significant rainfall,
Yeah.
at which time everything goes in a way.
I think we're talking about something well in the future. You know, we have to sort of first see what the contributions are around the pond.
I'm just asking about what's a feasible solution. I'm not saying who would do it or when, but is it feasible? Would that be a way to address stormwater runoff? Because it's all over. It's a huge problem. And I also lived in Southampton and North Sea, and I see some of the projects they're doing because they have a really bad problem with that. You know, like at the end of Noyak Road where it goes into Little Peconic, they're doing some big project there.
Alewife Creek there.
Yeah. So it's persistent, and I've thought about it a lot. I just can't figure it out, what you would do with it.
It's going to take cooperation among owners around the pond, highway department, town, natural resources, trustees. First step is really to see what the inputs are and start addressing it as best as possible.
But there may be a way to get it, capture it, and bring it someplace other than put it into the harbor, into the pond, and just trying to kind of like think out of the box, because we're kind of stuck here at this point.
I mean, this is something I'm sure the city of New York has been looking at for forever, and every place else, they realize that in certain storms, but it's there now. It's what keeps the streets dry,
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking, you're not talking about a swimming pool full of water. You're talking, millions and millions of gallons in some places. I think we should, stick with trying to fix up Cannonball Creek.
Well, let's move on if we
Let's see
can.
the survey, let's see the data.
Okay. Thank you all.
Good night.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Ron. Okay. Marissa, Jade,
Hey, ladies, thanks for coming.
thanks for your patience.
I'll let Marissa go first. Yeah. So I believe I have a presentation as well. So for those that don't know me, my name is Marissa Velasquez. I am the Natural Resources Program Manager for the Peconic Estuary Partnership. So first, thank you all for having us here tonight. PEP does a lot of work in the estuary and has a lot of active projects going on in the town of East Hampton. But we are here today to talk about three kind of more exciting, I guess, or projects that we're really excited about for this year and then the next coming years. So I also think Joyce is on the phone. She's our executive director. And then Jade here will give her introduction when she's talking about her project. Next slide. Next slide after this. So just starting and getting into it, one of the first projects that I wanted to talk about this evening is clam monitoring and capacity building in the town of East Hampton. So in PEP's CCMP, our Comprehensive Conservation Management Plan, we have an action listed as Action 35, which is to monitor the results of shellfish restoration efforts, share findings, and encourage the creation of shellfish spawner sanctuaries. So with having this in our CCMP action, we felt that the town of East Hampton would be a perfect partner for kind of moving forward with this action. Reason being is the town has a long history of a robust hatchery program, and with decades of research and data and investment. And so this is kind of where we first started forming this brainchild of, kind of surveying these seed placement areas and looking to see what the quality and get some quantitative findings for how successful restoration has been throughout the years here in East Hampton. So here you can kind of see the seed placement map. This is the 2024 and from the hatchery's website that they release. The red areas, as you all are probably familiar, are the clam seedings and the plantings. And so looking at this, these are kind of the areas that we'll be targeting in the different embayments to focus on this project. We haven't officially selected what sites yet. We are still consulting with Barley at the hatchery, as well as our partners at Stony Brook University, who are going to help us with this. And once we have those areas, we will definitely be happy to show you what sites we've selected.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course, John.
You say restoration efforts, but a lot of these sites are actively harvested, so
Yes,
they're really.
sorry. So instead of restoration, I mean plantings, right? And just kind of looking at the successive output from like what the hatchery is outputting. I know a lot of these are in heavily harvested areas for recreational purposes. And so I think, especially with talking to Barley, I think a lot of the question was, what does that successful output look like? So I think the idea would be to do a similar design, which was what was done with the Long Island Shellfish Restoration Project. Comparatively, those areas are not open to harvest. And I think the idea would be to take that methodology and apply it to somewhere that is of harvest. Apologies. And so with that being said, I think a huge portion of this is not only to monitor the seeding areas, going back to the idea of this building capacity. So for those that aren't familiar with the Long Island Shellfish Restoration Project, a lot of the methodology behind that is done via scuba. It's in water that's a little bit too tall to stand in. And so in order to conduct like efficient and effective monitoring, folks need to be trained up on that. Whether it be, right, first as an open water scuba diver, but then it's nice to have the ability to be a scientific diver as well, since you're doing a lot of active work underwater. So when we talk about building capacity here, we're talking about investment into an organization, into a program such as the Shellfish Hatchery. The idea would be to train up 2 folks from the hatchery, invest in their training, their specialized the specialized time that goes into that, and partner them with folks out of Stony Brook University, both for the scientific diving as well as for the scientific consultant on how to conduct this, and then kind of be in the mix of it for 2 years. And then after the 2 years, kind of phase ourselves out and then allow the town to kind of have this standalone program where they can actively monitor kind of these areas for their seedings and plantings. Next slide, please. So just kind of going over it, like I said, it's really to monitor the success of these clam seeding and planting areas in the multiple embayments. Like I said, to certify the hatchery employees in scientific diving and the continuation of this monitoring annually, since plantings and seedings happen every year through the hatchery program. When I talk about engaging those resources at Stony Brook University, I mean engaging their scientific diving class. They have a class that is actively available, so we would hope to put these folks through that training. It is standardized and it's through AAUS, so it's a very standardized program that's actively known through the scientific diving community. And then when we come to the components of monitoring these areas, assessing water quality or assessing quality of the planting sites, recommendation of new sites, and then quantifying the success of those shellfish plantings. So things like survivability, juvenile mortality, adult mortality. We hope to engage the Goldberg Lab at Stony Brook University, who worked actively with the Long Island Shellfish Restoration Project. So having some experts come in, guide them, and then we pull ourselves back and then allow this program to continue to monitor the success of what their hatchery output is. That's what I have for clam monitoring. I don't know if you guys have any questions. I'm happy to take them as I go along. Next slide, please. So the next thing I want to focus on is our habitat and wildlife work that we do here, and specifically talking about eelgrass, right, as a major habitat that we monitor and is a major resource that we want to continue investing in as a program office. So here I have an example of some work that the program office has put into creating story maps. So for decades, PEP has worked closely to acquire a lot of data over the decades of the local estuary-wide eelgrass beds. We've consolidated all of that data and have put it into a story map that is user-friendly and easily accessible. If I had access and would click, there are some links in the presentation, and I'm happy to circulate them so you have the hands-on ability to do so. But ideally, you could click on this link, go into the Peconic eelgrass story map. No, that's okay. And with this story map, it breaks down the different embayments where we've kind of looked at this data. Some off the top of my head in East Hampton are Napeague Harbor, and you can individually go into this location. It's very user-friendly. You kind of like just scroll down. It will give you the history of this area and eelgrass in this area, and also provide the historic data for you. So you can look at things such as water temperatures over time, reproductive shoots, output of the seagrass, shoot density and shoot height. So it's a really, really unique tool to be able to go back and historically look at this. So PEP has invested a lot of time in creating this interface to have folks like you be able to use it and to make informed decisions about habitat and eelgrass as we move forward. Next slide, please. So in that same breath, we've also invested a lot in aerial surveys. PEP has taken the initiative to conduct an aerial survey every 3 years. We just did this one in 2024. This is located on our PEP GIS data hub. And so what you can do is this is kind of the server and what it would look like. Just a little snippet in a screenshot. This is accessible through ArcGIS and other mapping programs, but if you didn't have the ability to do so, you could just go to this interface, and kind of those blue areas highlighted are what our eelgrass meadows look like right now in the Peconic Estuary. The reason we're kind of taking this initiative to monitor and do aerial surveys every 3 years is to kind of look at those minimal or short-term changes. There have been pretty big jumps in our aerial mapping initiative, which is highlighted in the story map. Our last one before 2024 was done in 2014. So we have a big 10-year gap in between that. We want to kind of minimize that. So our next aerial flyover will be conducted in 2027. And here we can start to begin to incorporate those data points into the story map, but also kind of be able to see what the changes in maybe a shorter period are looking like over time. And so again, having this be a usable server to make those informed decisions, right? We're talking about habitat here. We're talking about the interaction of habitat and wildlife with just everyday boating and users and things of that nature. Next slide, please. So as we begin to kind of put these pieces together and move forward, I wanted to talk about kind of our monitoring procedure in our program moving forward. Previously, we found that the methods that we were using don't really serve the program office anymore, and the initiative that we want to take in order to kind of preserve and monitor our eelgrass habitat here. So we've invested money and have brought in an outside expert. His name is Dr. Jonathan Lefchuk from the University of Maryland. He is a seagrass expert, and we've kind of brought him on to help us design what our new monitoring program and protocol will be. He sits on the board of an organization called SeagrassNet. So this is a global SeagrassNet site, or seagrass site. So pretty much what this server does is it standardizes monitoring protocols and procedures. It's a place where you can house data, and servers and users can actually actively use it and check kind of seagrass areas that are local to them. Not only are the standardization of methods very attractive to us as a program office, but the idea that we can kind of be able to target multiple sites in a short amount of time. So John was able to recommend 7 sites to us, and they span a range of conditions of different kind of beds. So anything from what he would call or consider a very healthy bed to like a sparse bed. So he suggested spots that are kind of all over the gradient. And so for the 6 sites, those are highlighted in green. And we did add an additional site, which is actually active as of September of 2025, and that's off of the Cedar Point beach area. So by Cedar Point Lighthouse, there's some ample seagrass there. So we implanted and also monitored that site this year. Some other sites to note in East Hampton are Napeague Harbor, and then the East Hampton side of Sag Harbor, which we're looking to make kind of a flagship site for our eelgrass initiative. I have highlighted a site out in Montauk, in the Lake Montauk area, because kind of when I transition into my next slide, I'll talk to a little bit more about some other engagements that we have with this. But yes, we can see sites that are 3 good condition, 3 poor condition. And then there are these sites in red, which highlight a different type of seagrass. It's called widgeon grass or rupia. Researchers and some of our experts have been seeing that pop up a little bit more. And this is a seagrass that we don't know too much about. It hasn't historically been monitored in the Peconic Estuary, but it has the ability to kind of, not necessarily be competitive, but be there where Zostra, which is the seagrass that we monitor, is. And so we thought it would be worthwhile to monitor this as well to make those comparisons over time.
Just a quick question on eelgrass monitoring. How is this different than what Cornell's been doing for years and years?
I think a large part of this is that so Cornell has a very robust eelgrass program. I think a lot of the time what we've seen a lot of video evidence and documentation of that. It's really hard to get quantifiable data from a lot of the historic eelgrass monitoring that has been done. There is data that we do have that is a part of our previous long-term eelgrass plan, which is what's incorporated into the story map, but there's a lot of plot holes there. And we're looking for something that's a little bit more flushed out and can be consistent on an annual basis, right? So taking out things like user error, taking out things such as like data storage, and really consolidating all those different points and putting it in a place that can be accessible and referred to consistently annually, year after year. So I think it's more just the sense of the quantifiable data. It's really hard for us to quantify things using video evidence. It's nice to see, right? Visually, it's a good representation to some degree, but we're trying to make informed decisions and invest money into different parts of the program. And the only way that we can really do that is by doing science-based and science-backed.
That was a fairly scientific program, wasn't it? And wasn't there documentation and stuff involved?
I mean, to some degree, I think Joyce, if she's on the phone, can speak a little bit more as to what our approach is with this, but based on kind of what was presented to us with Seagrass Net and how it's already being globally used, especially with our regional partners. So we have, PEP is a estuary program, and we are partnered, through our other national estuary programs that are doing something that is very, very similar. And I talk about it a little bit later, but what's nice is to be able to compare similarly to those other estuary programs as well. It's really hard to compare with the data that we have, say, with, the Massachusetts programs or other programs that we're looking to create a database with. It's really hard to kind of compare what's happening regionally up there versus what's happening down here.
Is the widgeon grass more heat tolerant than eelgrass?
Yeah, so it's suspected that with the warming bays, that widgeon grass is popping up more.
So
and it's intermittent.
It's like a succeeding vegetation.
Yeah, and so it's intermittent with a lot of these zostera beds that we're seeing.
Is it as useful to the environment as seagrass?
So that's what we're trying to figure out by monitoring the widgeon grass sites. So it's to see, things. We're also looking at benthic species in those areas through the monitoring program or the monitoring protocol that we're using. And so it'd be interesting to see if things like juvenile, scallops or juvenile shellfish are using that grass in the same way that they would use zostera as a habitat, which is why John recommended using one of those widgeon grass sites to compare over time. Next slide, please. So simultaneously with Seagrass Net this year just released a protocol for its citizen science groups called Seagrass Net Rapid. So this is very exciting because it allows the citizen science engagement, which we've, as a program office, have always been interested in through our other programs that we have and are looking forward to. So with Seagrass Net Rapid, what's very nice about it is, other than some of the technicalities of the regular protocol, a lot of this protocol can be compared to, say, what the folks who are diving and doing the technical portion of Seagrass Net, it basically can be compared side by side, because you're collecting things like chute density, you're collecting things like temperature, and so it's a great resource to have to engage citizen science partners. But what it's also really great for is to target areas of other seagrass beds that otherwise the researchers that we have doing this wouldn't be able to access. The program really, or like the actual sampling plan, is one day in the summer during the prime seagrass time of year. But with having 7 sites and potentially onboarding more, it's a lot of capacity for the program office to continue to monitor all those sites. And so it's really nice to have partners that are interested. We would provide all of the materials and the methods that they need with similar training. But some of the partners that we're looking forward to or have expressed interest in partnering with us are the Concerned Citizens of Montauk. So this would take over that Lake Montauk area, as we talked about, the South Fork Sea Farmers and the Spring School. So I'm very aware that the Spring School has a very lovely marine program with really great students that have been involved in marine science projects over the past few years, especially with the hatchery. And I know that some, after speaking with Bob Timon, have expressed interest in monitoring seagrass. And so we kind of thought, why don't we put those two things together? And so the students over the summer would actually have the ability to go and monitor another bed in NAPPIG for us, while also expanding on seagrass research that they would be interested in. And so we're looking forward to that partnership. And then just another one would be with the New York State DEC and the Friends of Orient Point at Orient Point State Park. We are kind of looking at this to be like a New York State site. The idea of this is to give as much information and provide kind of referenced data and just procedure to help New York State with their seagrass protection initiative. So working very closely with the New York State Seagrass Coordinator to really just provide as much information as we can to create those seagrass management areas. It's very tricky, right? There's a lot of data that goes into selecting a site. And so if we can help our partners there at DEC to continue to move that process along, we're happy to do so by any means with this. Next slide, please. And just to add some more exciting work that is really kind of taken our seagrass initiative and putting it back into research. And I know we talked about groundwater a little bit earlier, but just between the interactions of eelgrass and groundwater refugia. So this is work that started a few years back between Stony Brook University and Old Dominion University. And this is a very heavily research-based project. And so this was given to us through a grant. And this partnered, like I said, with Old Dominion, who did the aerial flyovers and the TIR imaging to trace radon, which is found in groundwater, and find these groundwater refugia pockets throughout the Peconic Estuary. That partnered simultaneously with Brad Peterson and his marine ecology lab to then put seagrass in these areas of groundwater refugia and to kind of see the interaction and assess how seagrass is doing over time. Like we just talked about, a lot of that can be due to bay warming very quickly, and Zostera sometimes doesn't react very well to that, and we've been seeing kind of this decline over time. And so our idea when we talk restoration is to really focus on this as a methodology in order to assess how seagrass is doing near these cold water pockets. And so with this, we have monitored for 2 years already, and we are looking for a total of 5 years of monitoring to really assess site suitability and if this is working as a restoration technique for seagrass. So we're looking for 3 years of this further. This comes in a two-part system where the investment will be. Next slide, please.
But can I just ask you on that, those blue lines, are those the temperature zones? That's along the coastline, and that's where the temperature is lower, or?
So you can, so there's on the next slide, there's a little bit of a better image and a chart that can kind of show you. So yeah, so you can kind of see it gives like a range. And what we've done is in the image, the larger image to the right, are all of the points that have been radon traced already. And then kind of when you see to the images on the left, these are those areas where you're seeing a larger difference in temperature. So I think the red is actually the lower temperatures, trying to see from here. And ideally, this is kind of where we're going to be seeing those pockets. And so when all of these areas are radon traced, you can kind of cross-reference and say, okay, this is where groundwater is coming out. Let's engage the marine ecology lab to start putting out eelgrass there and then see how that interaction fares over time.
Do you think there are applications beyond seagrass site location for this technology?
Absolutely. I mean, I think even, you know, when we talk about the bay scallop die-off and interactions with organisms such as that, I think that's something as a resource to definitely use. There are plenty of ample I think interactions and uses for this kind of data. So I think we tier it where we partner it with seagrass, just based on how we're moving forward with our, you know, restoration plans, or, you know, how PEP looks at restoration. But I think there are plenty of other uses for this kind of technology and data. And so what you can kind of see, at least with the investment and why we want to put 3 more years into this, is first, only half of the Peconic Estuary is mapped. And so with the success that we've seen thus far, we want to map the rest of it. That includes East Hampton. And so we want to kind of create a whole picture of what groundwater refugia is looking like within the estuary. Next slide, please. I think I have a... Solid image here. Okay, so this is just to give an idea of the restoration plan. But yes, only half of the estuary is mapped. And so with this initiative, we would be able to map the entire estuary. And this is the next phase of the project, is to find more sites and to continue monitoring at the pre-existing sites already. If we give an ample amount of time, say 5 years of collecting and monitoring this data, then I think we can start really talking about what the future of restoration looks like through research and through these quantifiable data points that we are collecting, again, through these aerial flyovers and through the engagement of the Marine Ecology Lab. Next slide, please. So again, like I said, this is through Old Dominion University, and attached here is a link to the story map that they've actually created with all the work that they've done thus far in the Peconic Estuary. When you click the link, you'll see that hard border and that stop of, the eastern end of the estuary hasn't been mapped yet. And so this is where the investment that PEP is talking about will go towards, is continuing that mapping and then continuing the seagrass restoration portion of that as well, and looking at that interaction over time. Next slide. So just as a last note on habitats, and especially with eelgrass, just kind of the next steps of everything already that I've talked about is going back to that regional network that we're talking about. This again is to make those comparisons with our regional partners, through our National Estuary Program partners, and really work to create an eelgrass management strategy that lists that criteria that can be helpful to the New York State Eelgrass Protection Act, but also to create those seagrass management areas that is spearheaded by New York State DEC and their seagrass coordinator. It's, again, a lot of people are doing a lot of work, and to agree on the criteria takes a decent amount of time. And so any information that we can provide through our initiatives will only further help to engage New York State in their initiative. On a separate note, we are also working with NOAA to upload those eelgrass layers that I previously showed you before on the data hub, to try to put that on navigational charts for boaters. So this goes back to what I was talking about with Sag Harbor being that flagship site. There's a lot of boating interaction there, and there's a lot of seagrass meadows there, very sparse. But the idea would be to, again, make that an accessible chart for boaters to say, here's seagrass, let me stay away, let me not throw an anchor there, to just be more vigilant and aware of what the resources we have, right? And to kind of just be able to maintain that as much as we can over time.
Are they gonna put that on the maps for all navigational charts, like Nassau Point and places like that?
I think that's what we're trying for. We've been in contact with the harbor masters to see what would be the best way to do that. We've also been in touch with our EPA partners, since this is a federal organization, to see if there's a way that we can make that more accessible, and not only start with eelgrass, but there's a lot of other stuff that can go on navigational charts to protect wildlife and habitat as well. I know there's another program in a different state that's trying to do something similar to this. And so I think the more that people are trying to onboard this as a accessible resource could,
that's important,
further the initiative there. Yeah. And that would come with educational signage at the marinas, right? Maybe a QR code where people can scan and just kind of have it be phone accessible, and just to be able to list, why this is important, where this is happening, and any further information that would be pertinent to an everyday boater that's, using the water, on a day off in the summer, right? And so that, and partnered with conservation moorings. So conservation moorings are, an alternative to a typical anchor mooring system. It prevents kind of these scarring that you can see in eelgrass beds from the movement of the chain as it rotates. And so the idea would be to put conservation moorings out in Sag Harbor as well. But we are looking for other areas to use. So if the trustees ever have any suggestions or other locations, but like I said, Sag Harbor is kind of that flagship site that we're hoping to really engage with coming this year and into the following years as well. Next slide, please. So with that, I'm going to pass it along to Jade to talk about some of our coastal resilience.
Can I just
Yes, please.
summarize my understanding here.
Yes.
So you talked about three main things, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I took them as the monitoring of the seeding, of the seeding. Basically, the scientific eelgrass surveys, some of which will be done in East Hampton Trustee. And then the citizen science eelgrass monitoring. Those are three distinct projects that are funded through PEP.
Yes.
And when will they begin and when will they end?
Yeah, absolutely. So the seagrass net monitoring will be conducted on an annual basis. So there's no foreseeable end date. It's similar to how we monitor every year for our diatomaceous fish. It will just be an annually conducted survey.
When does it begin?
It begins in August. So the sampling is conducted at the same time at every site in the same month. So August of 2026. Like I said, the one site at Cedar Point is already live. So we will come back in August of 2026 and monitor that site again. So that's already established, installed, set up. So we can go back to that site, that pin drop, and be able to monitor in that area. The other 5 sites are coming online this year. So August will be when it's monitored, but installation of that might happen like a month earlier since we're putting in like temperature loggers. And sometimes monitoring and installation happens on different days.
We've worked with the Bob Tiemann a lot and his oyster reefs. And recently, one of his students has also done some eelgrass planting in association with the reefs. And we've kind of gotten, permits we've given permits for each one of these distinct student projects, basically. And I wonder if in order to maintain consistency, and given that we're trustees and trustees are very protective of their harbors, if we could get maybe applications for permits for these projects that you'll be working in East Hampton Trustee Waters doing, that we could just keep, a consistent pattern of knowing what's going on in the waters by various groups.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll send you the information, just, you can vote on it next meeting. You don't have to be here or anything. But
and then to additionally add the timeline for the clam monitoring. So training for that will happen in the fall of 26. So that will be summer into fall of 26. The hatchery staff needs to get open water certified. So that will most likely happen by me. I am a dive instructor, so it will help to kind of be able to engage them in that way. And then separately, the scientific diving component of that would happen in about September. So they should have all of their training by the fall. And then come the summer, that's kind of when we have almost like a shadowing program where folks from the Gobler Lab would come out with their resources and partner with those folks from the hatchery and kind of show them the ropes underwater, show them how to monitor, show them what to collect, what to look for. And so the monitoring of the seeding areas would probably happen the following summer.
Okay. So you could just summarize that in the application.
You got it.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, all.
Hey.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for waiting.
I have the pleasure of knowing some of you, but for those that don't know me, my name is Jade Flannel. I work on coastal resilience issues for Peconic Estuary Partnership. Before I jump into my stuff, I have on this slide, this is also connected to what Marissa was talking about on the data hub, trying to make as many layers in GIS accessible to as many people as possible. This is our hardened shoreline inventory. It was recently, this past year, by CCE ground truthed, and the report is coming out very soon. And so we'll keep you updated with that report, but the layers of the actual GIS is online on our data hub. So I just wanted to make sure you guys knew that. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm here and I'm very excited to talk to you about the Shoreline Adaptation Initiative. So some of you have been very engaged with this, and I appreciate all the time that you guys have spent letting me interview you and figure things out. The basis of the Shoreline Adaptation Initiative really was to figure out how do we make nature-based solutions a real viable option in the Peconic Estuary. And I really made it my mission to not only have it be a viable option in theory, but actually in practice within the regulatory system that we currently all experience, and understanding each perspective. How do we make it viable for local decision makers, for property owners, and for the regulators themselves? So to do this, we set out on a mission, and I really invested in time and interviews with all 6 East End towns, as well as the DEC, the Department of State, Army Corps, and my goal was to really map out the permitting process and be able to document and identify the hurdles that were being faced by all parties. And if I could document them, then I could connect them. And if I could connect them, then I could draft resolutions, hopefully. And a large part of this was understanding the differing perspectives based on the different agencies. And so that was where the connections of these hurdles really came together. And so as I was wading through this crazy spider web, I eventually worked with New York Sea Grant on making this viability assessment for the Peconic Estuary. And this is coming out in March, and it includes the identification of hurdles, it includes recommendations and next steps. Next slide. I'm just going to give you a little taste. So we did categorize a lot of our recommendations into one of these 3 categories. We have internal agency procedure recommendations, we have interagency coordination recommendations, and we have how do we focus on estuary-wide priorities and move that forward on a larger regional scale. So as this document is finalized in March, I'm hoping to come back to you and really target how we can each look at these recommendations and hopefully utilize them to solve some problems. So a large takeaway of all of this, all of these hours of interviews, really was that shoreline management is extremely difficult. It crosses agencies and jurisdiction, and I just want to explicitly say that you guys, I give you lots and lots of credit, because making decisions in this complex system is an extremely hard thing to do. And my real goal as I made relationships with all of these different regulators is that I want to just create mechanisms to help support you to make decisions that you're proud of, decisions that really reflect the local desires, and make those data-driven decisions. So overall, intergovernment alignment is something that I really saw as needing work across the estuary in all townships. And I tend to repeat this like one little catchphrase as I talk about this, which is always that I'm always looking for that dialogue across agencies, and it's not dialogue that's dedicated to consensus about what we think about a project. It's just dialogue for us to better understand why agencies are making the decisions that they made. And that is a level of transparency that we can all work towards. Next slide. So today, and John, you can put this on your checklist, today I'm asking for 3 things. And I'm really just hoping for you guys to agree to the consideration of these, help me to further develop them, to make them successful, and to work alongside PEP as they evolve and change. Can go next. We'll dive into each one. So the first one is for your continued support in our PEP shoreline site suitability model. This is a technical planning resource. It was requested very early on in my process and from many different perspectives. So similar tools have been successful in other states. They're not only used by the public, but they're also used by the regulators themselves. It's built from existing scientific knowledge. It's built from the environmental data that we can all agree on as being the most up-to-date possible. And local knowledge is part of the recommendations that these models spit out. So it's really just telling us what shoreline approaches make sense and where. And if implemented correctly, the ultimate goal would be to create consistent and transparent initial foundation for when homeowners go and say, what is possible on my project? Regulators are looking at the same map saying, what is possible? It would support that science-based permitting because the data in there is hopefully the most up-to-date data that we can find, and hopefully reduce some interjurisdictional tension when all different regulators at different levels are looking at the same thing. So the ask is really just for your continued support. I appreciate how much you guys have worked with me already, and we appreciate seeing you at all of our meetings. So, all right, next slide. Number 2. So the second one is really about communication across jurisdiction. So the ask itself is for the creation of a single shared email address, which sounds a little silly, but this single shared email address, if it can be dedicated only to shoreline regulation coordination, it has lots of potential to change how you interact with other agencies. So as we did these interviews, one of the challenges that we heard was that it's difficult to maintain their connections between the State Department, DEC, Army Corps, to understand who the local government representative is because of changing personnel and confusion over who contacts are. So the email itself would help to support the core interagency communication. So when a permit is filed with a joint permit, this email address would be notified of a permit application. So if you are looking at an application and have some sort of concern, theoretically, you would be able to search this email and understand whether a joint permit is currently in process, whether it has been submitted. You'd be able to identify which agency and which staff members are reviewing that joint permit. It would also give them the ability to share updates, amendments, and changes to the scope in case it's different from the scope that you're reviewing. You could ask them their perspectives on how and why they came to their decisions, and it would give a direct line for you to give and provide feedback on permits like that before they're issued, which could impact your relationship when we have certain scenarios, what we call permit shopping, right? Where applicants are able to leverage permits against each other. And then they get confusing mixed messages. So this is the simple first step fix to a complex problem that would really just create a single vector where you could look into that inbox and look up things that you're curious about and give you a direct communication line to permits that are being granted in your jurisdiction. Next slide. All right, and the last one. The final ask is for a consideration of an amendment to the trustee permit application itself. So this is specifically for a standardized site assessment form. So this can be used by regulators across jurisdiction, and if properly implemented, has the potential to give common baseline site conditions that can be recognized by all different types and levels of agencies and different townships. So this is something that was discussed at the Shoreline Summit back in June. The Delaware Living Shoreline Committee had a representative come by and they described how this was used there. And this is what this idea is modeled after. So if you can, next slide, go a little bit more into it. So this would have the ultimate goal of having one shared site assessment form that can be used by all East End towns, trustees, and state and federal partners in the joint application. That's the ultimate dream. If we can have comparable site conditions in a format that we can put all together, that means that we can have comparable projects. If we can have comparable projects, then we can have estuary-wide learning.
What does that mean? Comparable site conditions.
Right. So these site assessment forms are ways in which we can identify the environmental factors on a shoreline all in the same format and with the same categorization system, so that way, when you are thinking about permitting something here in East Hampton, we can say, oh, now that we can create a database of all the different types of projects, you'd be able, hopefully in the future, this is the investment now, to find an area that has similar environmental factors. Maybe it's in Southold, maybe it's in East Hampton, maybe it's in Southampton. but that now we can say what went in that site, what came of that project, what worked, and we can responsibly make informed data-driven decisions based on these other projects. And we can invest our public money more responsibly with that.
A while back, someone presented to the PEP about a decision-making model that they had. You know that? Did you derive this from that model?
So that model is the first bullet point that I had. The number one ask was the continued support for that model. That's part of that, but this is an additional.
But it's, I think where they got this from was there's a way, if you can describe things in a similar way, then you can use it to sort of artificial decision-making, like you can, you know, say, okay, I have X, Y, and Z, and here's what we do when we have X, Y, and Z. I don't know if, I don't know how helpful this would be because we don't really have too many comparable site conditions. But if you did, you could use it that way.
Yeah.
Presumably you'll be sending out like examples of this and trying to standardize it across the different jurisdictions.
100%. Yeah, this is just my introduction to you guys with the initial thought that this is going to be something I'm going to be chasing for who knows how long. And I hope to co-develop it alongside you for it to really address all the things that you're curious about. But at the end of the day, I'm deeply interested in making sure that local regulatory knowledge is shared, not only within the township, but in the case of changing boards, in the case of across the estuary, how do we make sure that those perspectives are valued?
There are some things, like say in any situation, in the scientific endeavor, there's probably 80% of the aspects of describing that project are standard and can be standardized. But then there's the 20% that cannot be, and that's where you want your scientists to really work in that domain. So if it makes it easier for you to have standardization, it's very helpful.
Yes. And on top of just your ability to learn from this and us have a database where you now have a resource to say, how did another jurisdiction handle this problem? Was that project successful? Just having that database for you to go back to. In addition, it also has the potential to inform the regulatory issues across jurisdiction. You will be able to create those dialogues with those other jurisdictions that maybe are not seeing it in the same way as you. And this would give us the beginnings of having a database like
where
this.
you have their same baseline information. That's the kind of thing that, so you don't have to go into it and say, oh, what do I need to do? These are the baseline descriptions.
Yes.
It takes a while to get used to this, but I've seen it work.
Yeah, well, so a lot of these recommendations, part of it was going around the country and understanding where are they doing this well. And so these recommendations are based off of places that aren't doing it well. Next slide, please. So these are the three of them, each lined up. Overall, we're really just asking and keeping you updated that the PEP shoreline site suitability model that we're talking about is New York State funded and currently in contract. We're going to be moving this forward, and we're excited to have continued trustee representation to attend in the further development of this. Second, the regulatory email idea. This is something that can be done internally at East Hampton Trustees, something that can be done by your IT team now. We're in the midst of speaking with state and federal partners on how it can be most successfully used. And I'm happy to continue talking about this.
Are you saying, so like we have an email unique to each person?
Yes.
Well, we also have a general East Hampton trustee.
Yeah, but I'm just saying
We
in
already have
general, emails are generally assigned to an individual. So if you're going to have one email for, we don't know for who, it's like, for any trustee.
Well, we have one email that comes into the trustees. Any of our staff can access it. Where I see the problem is not that. We've got that already. It's once a permit, say, moves down the line, somebody communicates with one of the trustees.
Right.
And that's where it's like, well, now I got Allison's email address, or I have Arlene's email address, or I'm talking, I've got Patrice's email address. How to police that, how not to have that spread out, I don't know. How to-
Yeah, you need to have someone triaging it. It's a lot of work.
Well, so this is, so as I talk about this recommendation, the creation of a specifically interagency email would be for when a permit application goes into the joint permit, right? There's conversations that are CCing the Department of State, Army Corps, and the DEC, where they're talking about the movement of this permit. They do not currently keep you updated on that. And this change is the hope for you to have one interagency email that's not given to the public and is only given to the joint permit staff to keep you informed that that joint permit, so that you have the ability to access it if you are interested in how and why something was put through.
Are you trying to make things move more quickly?
It's not about more quickly, it's about you having a line to understanding when you get a application. How was this given a joint permit already? Because you have that question.
You have to have individual responsibility. Someone has to be assigned to this project and working on it. And if you have this email address is not distinctly going to that individual, then you might lose their attention. You might go to the wrong person. You could end up adding more time. I think, I struggle with this one. I think for the first pass, like the first time you want to communicate with the agency, like in this case, the trustees, you could use the general email. But then after it goes to an individual person to work on, it makes no sense.
So I think that we can talk more separately.
I don't think we're gonna solve it.
Yeah, we can talk more separately about the email, but the point is that it would not be an email that you are checking and responding to. It would be a repository where you can look up an address if you have a question, because you will have a record of that permit moving. It's not so much an email to be actively used. Okay. So those are those three, and the final one, was just the hopefulness to consider and discuss and identifying one or two representatives to come and work on this site assessment form and see what the benefits could be and the potential of what needs to be included for that to be the most beneficial to you. That's it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jade.
Thank you guys so much. Please let me know. We can have additional conversations too.
If you're looking for our support for any particular thing, just send it to us like in a simple bullet list or something like that.
Yes. I just want you to keep coming to my meetings, you know?
Yeah.
We do our best.
Well, I appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Trustees, just to let you know, you still have Joyce Novak on the line. I don't know if you need to talk with her.
I think she was just listening in on that presentation, so.
Communicate with her?
What's that? Okay, so let's move on here. So next on the agenda is East Hampton Village extending the beach season. We had a little discussion on that. I really just wanted to let the board know, as I already did, I guess, that there'll be a meeting that's going to be scheduled with the mayor and a couple of trustees. And looks like they're backing off a little bit from a beach-wide change. And then looking at just implementing something at a David Beach to begin, but I don't know what that proposal is.
That's something that we all get to hear about and talk and vote on.
Yeah, I guess we're gonna have to bring that back to the board, whatever that next proposal is. Okay, next is Wayne Scott Osborne Farm Property Management Plan Draft. I sent that out to everybody. I don't know if anybody looked at it, has any thoughts about it. Jim and Francis had met with Scott Wilson, I believe, talking about duck hunting, duck blinds on Wainscott Pond. And as far as I understand from the language in the plan now, that's still going to be able to be controlled by the trustees. The only thing that really stood out to me was, when Wainscott Pond was surrounded by privately owned property, we were always like, well, the public can't access it, so there's little we can do about that. And now that the town owns that property, the language that I read in the plan talks about access, but it kind of talks about, access with the permission of the town in some cases. And I don't know how the board feels about that language. Maybe, I don't want to beat this to death tonight, but maybe next meeting we should think a little bit more about what's the language in the plan and do we want to tweak it at all? I don't know how the board feels about it, allowing the public to access Wainscott Pond, sort of without having to get any special permission from somebody else to do that. And I'm not sure that the language I read in there is that clear that a member of the public can just access the pond through other public property that freely. So,
Isn't there some discussion about a path?
Sure.
Well, John, can I say something? One thing I think we really have to be concerned about is the harmful algal blooms that are in there and public access. It's what kind of liability is it?
That's consideration, sure.
Yeah, well, it's like how they closed Georgica Pond because of the levels are dangerous, and this is even worse than Georgica Pond, right?
Well, not to access though. They closed it to crabbing and.
I mean, you put warning signs up.
Right.
There's a warning sign up there now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
Right, but if you just have open access, people are going to want to be dragging kayaks down there, and it's going to be a new thing, and people are going to be curious. So I think we should think long and hard about what kind of access we want to allow.
Well, there is language in the plan about the possibility of, putting trails through there. Presumably they would be open to the public.
That's what I was going to mention.
And the trails would probably go by the pond.
Well, it doesn't say where they'll go, but maybe, maybe access, pond access, free access to the public can be all negotiated in the location of those trails and, how the public can be protected from toxins in the pond.
What's going to keep the people on the trail?
So we can revisit this.
Yeah, it's good.
But take a look at that language in there. I know it's only a few pages.
Okay, I did look at it, but I'll look,
Yeah, I looked it over. I didn't study it.
That's a good point.
So next is old business, mention of the science fair, quickly.
Well, they were terrific projects. And as I said, I saw one by a sixth grader that was really interesting. It was the son of a fisherman who observed that when the fish he was fishing got a lure where there was no real bait, on the second try, the fish were not interested. They seemed to have a memory. And he held all the background conditions of the water constant and all of that. So it was a very good project.
I really liked, I had so much fun that day. The fifth graders, they were so intimidated at first to talk about their projects, and then they opened up and, demoed like some things, like they took my fingerprint to do this
genetic ID of a fingerprint. But it was really cute how organized they were and how they documented their process, and their conclusions were not always, that was where they were just floundering a little bit, but they're only in the 5th grade, so they'll get that later. But I thought it was really fun, and it's a nice group.
Well, I got to meet the county executive and have a little chat with him over bagels and fruit, so that was the highlight of my day. Okay, moving on. Committee reports. Cornell Cooperative Extension Winter Troll Survey delay. The troll survey was delayed. The new dates were as of last week. I got notification from Cornell that they in fact did get out on the survey last week, so that's winter survey's been done. There'll be one more survey in this 5-year plan, in the spring survey, and they're thinking of doing that in early May. So after that, all the data will have been collected, and according to the contract with Ørsted, there's a 6-month period of data assembly and analysis. So I'm figuring we should probably get some report, a little bit close to a report, probably roughly by the end of the year. So
I would like to know how they're going to QC their data, the way they're managing this data. Are they just certain standard things, like are they doing double data entry? Are they running tests for consistency? Because to have this 5 years worth of data just sitting there, and then to put it together and do something with it, some would have done preliminary aggregations and things like that. And I don't know what they did.
We don't know if they haven't.
But it would be fair for them to share, what their analysis plans are for the data. I mean, I'm sure they've thought about this. They haven't. They're not just.
Well, the data is going to be worked up by Matt Scalfani and Bob Serrato of Stony Brook and Cornell. So I'm sure you can ask the question.
No, they seem quite competent. I'm just curious because of my own personal background. Like I know what I would expect to be asked to do. And I'm just curious what they plan to do for an analysis, because it's a unique analysis. It's not like.
And then there's the analysis of the, the telemetry study.
Right.
The, companion study to the troll survey. So, and then they'll probably have to be synthesized into one overall understanding of what's going on in the area, in the fish migration and assemblage. So
I think it's going to be a really fascinating analysis. I'm just curious how they're going to approach it.
I'm sure you can, get in touch with Matt.
That would be.
And ask him some questions. Okay. All right. Georgia Pond dredging and sand removal. Well, Jim's not here, so I don't know if anybody else got a chance. I saw that the pond is low, so I'm assuming it's been cut, and perhaps they've begun to dredge sand, but.
No, but on the, you had asked the last time about Little Fresh Pond and the impacts of the storm on the dredging.
Right.
I did take photographs. I didn't give them to Allison yet, but it did withstand it. It's now, the water is frozen on the top, like a series of ice sheets, like a puzzle almost, and they're just all going out. There's movement. It doesn't seem like the sides got deteriorated at all. It's okay, but.
The way the wind is, those rocks protect the pond pretty good from, we've had a northwest wind now for a while.
Yeah.
14, 18 forever, I think.
Yeah, I just wondered about that. Whatever brought that snowstorm, I know there was some pretty strong winds from the northeast for a
Yeah.
There's a lot of ice out there. It's sort of, you know, we had that protective covering on all the sand.
But it didn't get just totally wrecked or anything.
Okay, good. Okay, kayaks. Remove, for the date to remove the kayaks is currently November 15th. We've talked about moving it up to December 1st. Tim Treadwell is in agreement that he's in agreement.
Oh, good.
To do that. So if anybody wants to make a motion to extend the date of removal of the kayaks to December 1st.
I make a motion to extend the kayak removal to December 1st.
I second.
All in favor? That's been carried. David and Patrice, second?
Yes.
Okay. Teague Lazy Point. Request from InterScience Research Associates on behalf of Devon Yacht Club. So the county tax map number 300-127-3, 16, and 17 for approval to perform maintenance dredging at the Devon Yacht Club Inlet between May 21st, May 31st, 2026. We've got their application. Jim Walker said he wouldn't be attending tonight. I think we can vote on this. This is something that's pretty standard. We approve this every year. The dredge spoil gets deposited on the beach downdrift of the inlet.
Onsen, which is Trustee Beach.
Trustee Beach.
Yeah.
So,
I make a motion to approve. That's great.
Second.
second. All right.
With the dredge committee.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes, and carried. So that was Patrice and Tim. Okay, 3 Mile Harbor. Request from First Coastal on behalf of Jerome Griffith, 60 Hedges Banks Drive. Suffolk County Tax Map number 335-1.7. Approval of a 3-year permit for dune restoration. We received that application. That's also something that we've permitted a few times. This is work done by InterScience. It's sort of as much each year as is needed to be graded, sand deposited, blended with beach grass, and hopefully will grow and secure the bluff. So I took a look at that, and I think I'll make a motion that we approve this 3-year.
A second.
You made the motion?
John.
Me.
Okay.
Patrice, second.
And
Yes.
Patrice?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, and finally, administrative payment of the
I
bills.
just have to recuse myself regarding the payment to Bistria Materials because they're a client of the firm where I work.
Oh, come on.
So the first is following bills need to be paid. Van Dyke and Han, BC, $605 for accounting services. Second is Bistria Materials Incorporated, $49,300, which breaks out into $8,700 for sand distribution across the Trustee Beach at Louse Point and $40,600 for distribution of sand along the beach south of Louse Point, in front of the bluff adjacent to the beginning of the bulkheads.
I'll make a motion to approve the bills.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Jesus.
Arlene, if you can just register that I recused from that vote.
Hey, Chris?
Hello? Go ahead. He's here.
Chris, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah, do you think it's necessary for her to recuse herself on that kind of a vote, just because they're a
No,
client
I don't.
of the firm?
No,
No? No. Well,
once you recuse yourself as well, it's really a non-factor. But no, it's not necessary.
it's a known thing to us. It doesn't create a conflict that you have some. Well, the only is the appearance of impropriety in the sense that there might be a potential conflict of interest that would lead me to approve this when I didn't view that as appropriate. Okay, so you don't think it's appropriate? Yeah, so I just personally, considering there are enough votes to vote on this matter in part, I would feel better not voting on it.
Well, certainly you have the right.
Yes, exactly. You don't have to.
It's fine either way.
Okay, and finally, minutes of the January 12th, 2026 meeting. Anybody had a chance to read them?
Yes, I did. I make a motion to approve the minutes. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Report of the clerk. Francis, you have anything for us? Report of the clerk. Do you have anything for us?
It's been away.
Not
No, I don't. I haven't been too closely connected the past 2 weeks.
So I think we're going to meet with Chris now.
We can stay afterwards to meet.
I'm having some bandwidth problems. Okay, thank you.
To get one of Fred Joe's attorneys on the phone to discuss the party action. I still have enough information. So you motion set around a couple dates and times for that conference.
Your motion to close?
Second.
All in favor?